interrupt your normal broadcast to bring you this special news bulletin.
We're back.
Yeah, I think
We're
so.
back.
Back.
It's going.
Guess
It's
who's
happening.
Back again.
Yeah. All right. Season 3.
Woo-hoo.
Part 3 in
Yeah.
3D.
No, it's not in 3D.
It's not. It's
no,
not.
we can't make sound happen in 3D.
But if this was a trilogy, like all trilogies, this is going to be the best one yet.
Uh-huh.
What? Do you have a rebuttal? Do you have
I
disagreements?
have so many rebuttals. I can't believe you just said that out loud. I mean,
What?
man, Jaws 3.
Okay.
Yeah, Home Alone 3.
All right.
Terminator, Shrek, Smokey and the Bandit 3.
Okay.
Tokyo Drift, man.
Okay. Godfather 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But we're going to Return of the King this season, okay?
Sure.
We're going to Toy Story 3 this season, son.
Okay.
We are
All
going
right.
against all odds.
I was wondering what the volcano was doing in my backyard. I guess that's what it is. Throwing
what
the
it
ring
is.
in there.
All right, boys and girls, and whatever you identify as.
Listeners.
Kyle, sweet Kyle, my
Dustin.
good friend.
Strange Dustin.
Hey, that was rude. Mine was
I'm
nice.
I'm sorry. They were
Kyle.
equally accurate.
That's true. Kyle, what are we talking about this week?
We are talking about the amazing, the incredible,
Hulk.
the objectively pretty good late 80s Western Young Guns.
Young Guns.
It has a banger soundtrack. I'm sorry. I'm not even.
What?
I'm not,
You
Has
like
a
the
banger-
soundtrack to Young
I
Guns
do.
1?
I do like the soundtrack to Young
I
Guns
literally
1.
wrote a joke in the script about how bad the soundtrack is.
Oh, no.
It's so bad. How
What?
could you like this?
Because it's.
I'm just going to
good.
go ahead and get my joke out of the way. It sounds like a Hulk Hogan TV show from 1992. That's what this soundtrack sounds like.
Wow.
It's not
Okay.
good. And ironically, John Bon Jovi, rock star angel himself, made the soundtrack for Young Guns 2. So, and it's a banger. It actually
And
is
that
a
movie's
banger.
garbage, so, you know.
It has good reviews. I don't know. I remember liking it. We're going to have to do Young Guns 2. We're going to Last of the Mohicans this. All
oh,
right.
no.
You're going to love it, or I'm going to love it, and you're going to hate it.
That's right.
But that was the opposite for Last of the Mohicans. Moving on.
Yeah. Moving on.
Wow, it took us 45 seconds into season 3, and we're already distracted.
Perfect.
Perfect.
That's a record.
What other way to start?
Yeah.
All right. So, Young Guns, 1988. 6.8 on IMDb. Critic score? 43%.
Boo.
Boo. Critics are
Boo.
stupid. We should bring one on and just roast them the whole time. Not even
Critics
talk about
just-
the movie.
Critics just don't like to have fun, I think. I think
Critics-
anytime a critic's heart rate gets above a certain amount in a movie, they dock at a point. They're like, nope, can't do it.
Oh, I almost enjoyed myself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I almost yelled at the screen. Nope.
Nope. 76% from audience. That's better.
It's still too low, but it's better. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
I'll take it.
It's close.
Yeah.
Budget of 11 million. Okay, gross 56. Now, interesting enough, that's pretty good numbers.
Mhm.
Interesting enough, limited budget due to the massive flop of Heaven's Gate in 1980, a 3.5-hour Western epic that nobody turned out to watch.
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of it? I forget
No.
the guy's name. He's the guy that directed Deer Hunter, and then this was like
Oh.
his third big film. He won 2 Oscars in a row, and then he dropped Heaven's Gate, and everyone's like, get rid of this guy.
One of the worst films ever made.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my
What's the
gosh.
director's name?
It is Michael Cimino?
Sounds right. Yeah. Guy that did Deer Hunter. Deer
Yeah.
Hunter, also kind of overrated. Just going to say it. Just going to say it right here. We lost half our audience already.
It's fine.
Who cares? I mean, I do, but
Not us.
We both do.
Please come back.
Please come back. I'm so sorry. I don't care. Come back, please.
Please,
Okay.
I hunt deer. It's okay. I can say that.
Yeah. Not really what the movie's about. I mean, it's part of it. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, definitely in the 80s, a slump for the Western genre. After the heyday of the Clint Eastwood and John Wayne-led movies, prior to the 90s resurgence with classics like Dances with Wolves, Unforgiven, and Wyatt Earp, Despite, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding about the last one. I'm kidding. Yeah, so there was a resurgence in the 90s of not horror, gosh dang it, of Western movies. It's Halloween month. My mind's on horror movies. So anyways, with these movies, they were huge successes, but legitimately Heaven's Gate was such a flop that for the majority of the 80s, not a lot of Westerns were coming out and not very many were being greenlit. So despite the writer John Fusco, this being a passion project of his, producers weren't interested in a Billy the Kid movie because, quote, the Western was dead.
Whoa.
So
that's fascinating because according to this very fast Wikipedia page skim through I read on Heaven's Gate, since it was released, people have decided that it's actually really pretty okay. Apparently there's edits of it that were made later, not the official re-edit, but there are later edits of it that it's rated by BBC Culture as the 98th entry on the 100 greatest American films of all time. Which, granted, that's a British opinion.
Whatever.
I just think that's fascinating. I have no idea how awful the movie is. I don't intend to ever watch it. But
3.5 hours, man. That's a long movie.
It sounds a lot like a 1980s version of that Alexander the Great movie that came out that took like 10 years to produce, and when it first came out, people were really disappointed, and then the director was like, well, this is how I wanted it, and people said, okay, it's better. It's
is this
not
like
great.
Justice League?
A little bit, except not nearly as big of a jump up.
Right. Speaking of directors, directed by Christopher Kane, who also directed 1994's The Next Karate Kid.
Oh.
John Fusco, already mentioned him. He also wrote the movie Spirit, which is the animated horse movie.
Bro, that movie slaps. Talk about a soundtrack.
You know, honestly, I do believe that was the first movie I ever watched in theaters. I was 4 years old when it came out. I think it was the first movie I ever watched in theaters. Don't remember a darn thing about it and haven't seen it since.
It hits. I don't know why, but it hits.
Let's break down our cast here because it's kind of interesting. So we just talked about how this is a slump for the Western. They had difficulty raising the budget, which it wasn't a large budget in the first place. But let's go through this cast. First on was Emilio Estevez as Billy the Kid. And then following him was his brother Charlie Sheen, who plays Dick Brewer. And then Kiefer Sutherland, only 21 at the time, also whose child was born during shooting. He's going to play Doc. Chavez, Lou Diamond Phillips, who never auditioned. The producers read the character's description to him and offered him the role on the spot due to him playing in La Bamba the year or 2 years prior. Dirty Steve Stevens, I'm going to say this wrong, Dermot Mulroney. Oh, that may have been right. I don't even know. And then...
I think it's Dermot, but you got his last name right.
Close enough. And then Charlie, played by Casey Simasco. Something like that. So, according to Lou Diamond Phillips, Sean Penn was originally offered the role of Billy the Kid, and Patrick Swayze was offered the role of Dick. But Sean Penn was not able to do it because he was facing legal troubles.
I see.
And then Patrick Swayze didn't do it because he was trying to break out of the Brat Pack era of films. He wanted to not do things that were associated with Emilio Estevez and his kind of, Brat Pack.
So he did Roadhouse instead.
He did Roadhouse instead, and it's the greatest movie ever made. So, moving on. So, Charlie Sheen had starred in Platoon, Ferris Bueller, and Wall Street. Emilio Estevez has starred in Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, and also Maximum Overdrive, which is a movie.
Yes, it is.
Lou Diamond Phillips has starred in La Bamba, which he would sing the song when the boys drank together after shooting. He also was in Stand and Deliver. And Kiefer Sutherland had been in Stand By Me and The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys, I instantly during this time, because Lost Boys I think came out in 87. It's a vampire. Have you ever seen it? It's a vampire movie.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay.
Has the weirdly sexy saxophone player at the very beginning.
Right. The stupidly buff, stupidly oiled.
The like Schwarzenegger level buff saxophone player to start the movie.
Fact,
and it just gets weirder from there.
But
I love that movie though.
It's great. And what it was is it was like a sign, like a cultural sign of the times. Like it was rock era. It was MTV era, and it was literally the Lost Boys. It was the teenagers and the young adults of the time, and it was kind of their movie. And I really see Young Guns as the Western version of Lost Boys. So we're going to get into this. Fun fact beforehand, no less than 52 movies portraying Billy the Kid prior to Young Guns. Also, and as I'm sure you will point out and go against, the writer, John Fusco, like I said, it was a passion project of his. He spent 5 months in New Mexico researching to make the script as accurate as possible. He did have to make changes to make it more Hollywood, but still. I like the opening sequence here, man. We have some weird edits and weird effects on the video. Not a huge fan of that, but I do like that the opening sequence is like it's introducing our cast, and it's like the beginning of a rock video of the time. That's what I'm saying, man. Like they just introduced they introduced this ensemble cast, and they're like, look, we've got a story to tell. It's a good story. It's a decent story. But
it's fun. You're going to have fun.
This is what you're buying in for. You're buying in for these people playing these characters, and you're going to follow them for the next, 2 hours or so.
Yep.
In our lineup, we already went through our main characters here. Who's real? And there's a line, ain't none of them 21. Is that true?
So of the 6 regulators, which we'll get into why they're called that later, the only one who is not real in terms of their name is Dirty Steve.
Dirty Steve.
So Charlie Beaudry, Dick Brewer, Jose Chavez y Chavez, Doc Scurlock, and Billy the Kid are all real people, all of which were regulators in what will be called the Lincoln County War. As far as them being 21, they're not that young. Billy the Kid is that young. Doc Scurlock might be, or Charlie Beaudry might be close to that young. No, Charlie's in his 30s. Billy the Kid's that young. The rest of them are men. They're young men, but they're in their mid to late 20s for the most part.
Okay.
Like Dick Brewer is 28, which is part of the reason he's the foreman of the group. But
that's fair.
They're still not old. Like they're not like grizzled by any means, but they're not young. They're about our age, give or take.
And John Turnstall, real person as well. He's kind of the
John Tunstall. Yeah,
Tunstall. What did I say? Turnstall. Tunstall. John Tunstall.
John Turnstile. John Tunstall. He's real. He is one of the biggest age discrepancies in the movie of people who their age matters.
Okay.
Because Murphy's a pretty big age discrepancy, but he's the bad guy and he's a peripheral figure and it doesn't matter. But John Tunstall is 24 in history, like in actual history during the events of the movie. He's very clearly in his late 40s, probably early 50s.
Yeah.
In the movie.
He's very much a father figure in the movie.
Yeah, he's definitely not in real. In the actual history, he's the same age, if not a little younger than most of these guys.
So I know this is only a kind of a sliver of Billy the Kid's life. So when we first meet him, he's running away from armed men, and he hides in a cattle yard before getting on John's wagon. What was early life like for Billy the Kid, and kind of what brings him to this kind of halfway house for lost boys?
Early life is hard for Billy. So he's born in New York City. We're not entirely sure when. We know it's 1859, but we're not completely sure of the day.
Okay.
His father dies when he's pretty young, and his mother moves him and his brothers to Indianapolis, where she meets this man named William Henry Harrison Antrim. He treats them decently for a couple years. They move to Wichita. They finally settle in the New Mexico territory in Santa Fe. And shortly after Billy's mother and this man, William, get married, she dies of tuberculosis.
Ooh.
And then right before she dies, when it's clear she's on death's door, William just leaves the family. He just abandons all the boys. So Billy the Kid, whose actual name is Henry McCarty, he uses the alias William H. Bonney later as he commits more and more crimes.
Which they point out in this movie. William H. Bonney is one of his aliases. They make sure to mention that.
It's the name he was going by at the time that he meets these guys.
Okay.
But the legend, formerly known as McCarty, he's 14 when his mom dies. So he immediately has to steal food. He gets caught. 10 days later, he robs a Chinese laundromat, stealing clothing and pistols. He's jailed. He escapes. He gets to the Arizona territory, where inevitably he just becomes deeper and deeper in organized crime. It's worth noting he's not organizing any crime so much as he just needs to survive. And the only way he finds to survive is to steal horses, to steal other things, yada, yada, yada. He begins to become known as Kid Antrim because he's still going by his stepfather's name to hide his actual identity.
Okay.
And at this point, he's like 18, I think, something like that. In 1877, he begins to call himself William H. Bonney. And it is in 1877 when he gets into an argument in a small village in the New Mexico territory with a man named Francis Windy Cahill, a local blacksmith who is, by all accounts, a bully and an asshole. And one day just starts antagonizing and lambasting Billy the Kid with all sorts of awful things. Billy turns around and calls this blacksmith a son of a bitch. The blacksmith throws him to the floor and tries to shoot Billy with his own revolver. Billy kills the blacksmith. He has no choice. Everybody in the area knows he has no choice, but he's young. He's terrified. He runs away, assuming that he's going to get tried for murder. And by running from the crime scene and stealing a horse to flee from the crime scene, he becomes a wanted criminal.
Okay.
He finally kind of works his way back to avoid making this all about Billy the Kid's early days. He makes his way back to Lincoln County, where he slowly finds work with local ranchers, and he ends up as an employed cowboy for John Tunstall.
Okay, so it is mentioned that he says he has killed someone before. And it's also kind of implied that he's the only one of the boys that have killed someone before. So this is the one?
This is the one.
Blacksmith?
And when he tells the boys, he goes, "What'd you kill him for?" And he says, "He was ragging on me."
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, he killed him because the blacksmith tried to kill him first, but it started because he was talking crap.
All right. I like how it complements what really happened.
Yeah, it's one of those movies. It's one of those movies, they do a great job of pulling out the fun parts of the history to where like it creates a narrative that you kind of just assume is mostly right because it flows well. Turns out it's not, and I'll get into that later, but it's a really brilliantly crafted fake history. Like they do a great job of kind of putting the pieces together to make it seem like it's what actually happened.
So John Tunstall, a.k.a. Cowboy Master Splinter, real person. Not as old as he is in the movie, real person, but is he just kind of a businessman, or is he actually trying to help these boys, or what's going on here?
He's kind of fascinating in his own right. He is a low-level aristocrat from England. He's not super royal, but he is wealthy. And he arrives in the New Mexico territory because it's not a state yet in November of 1876 when he's 22 years old, 23, somewhere in there. He arrives with a plan to develop his own ranch, and he meets the lawyer, Alexander McSween, who's also in the movie, and a rancher who's not in the movie but probably should be, named John Chisholm, and they band together to form a ranch, a store, and a bank. The reason they want to make these things is because the only store in Lincoln County, so the only supply store, so giant general store where you get everything from that you need to survive, belongs to L.G. Murphy & Co., which is this monopoly built by Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan. Okay. So in real life, he hires these men because he needs hard men to defend his interests from what is an openly corrupt cattle monopoly. Okay. Murphy and Dolan actively buy cattle from known rustlers, flip them, and sell them to the U.S. government to feed the cavalry and the army. They have the governor of the New Mexico Territory, the attorney general of the New Mexico Territory, and a handful of other officials in their pocket. And they are so well funded and so deep in politics that they are called the Santa Fe Ring. Oh, because Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yeah, like they're a thing. Like people know that they exist. So he needs hard men to defend his interests. And I will get a little farther into what happens as we get deeper in the movie. But that's John Tunstall in a nutshell in real life.
All right. Well, L.G. Murphy in a nutshell, played excellently by Jack Palance.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna, when he arrives, he's accusing Tunstall of stealing property, but really he just wants his business out of town because they both own stores, just like he said. Okay, and the sheriff happens to be an investor in, showing that okay, he's got some.
And he is Sheriff William Brady is eyeballs deep in Murphy Co.
William Brady, gosh dang it. He says as he leaves, prepare for hell, just in case you weren't aware he's the villain.
He also calls them Englishmen a lot, which is another good historical tidbit because one of the reasons they hate each other so much is that Murphy and Dolan are Irish. They're Irish Catholic, and Tunstall is English, and McSween and Chisholm are English Protestant descendants. And this is 1870, so by descendant, we mean like maybe 2 generations.
Gotcha.
It's pretty intense. They do not like each other at all, and it's one of those that Murphy and Dolan are openly corrupt, but McSween and Tunstall are not exactly defenders of not being corrupt.
Okay.
Murphy's also a U.S. A Union Army veteran from the Civil War, so he's a pretty hard-nosed guy. He's only 46 when this stuff is going on.
Yeah.
So he's way too old in the movie, but he's a first-generation Irish Catholic immigrant who makes his money after the war, creating this massive corrupt cattle enterprise, and he does not take kindly to this young, rich English guy stepping in on his territory.
Okay. Doc with the ballsiest move of the movie, going up to the only woman standing next to Murphy and asking her for a dance. We have a cameo of Pat Garrett. Do you know who plays Pat Garrett in this movie?
I feel like I should, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
He was in The Searchers.
Okay.
Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son,
son.
who was replaced in part 2 when they needed someone who could actually act.
Burn!
Yeah. Burn!
Nepotism,
I'm sorry,
man.
Patrick Wayne. I'm just kidding.
Dude, I'm not sorry. He says 3 lines in the whole freaking movie, and it
Yep.
hurts me every time.
I think he does okay. He does fine here, but
he does fine in this scene. It's
Yeah.
the more important scene at the end that he doesn't do a great job in. But we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. So why does Billy say he can be as big as Pat Garrett? Who's Pat Garrett prior to this?
Pat Garrett is nobody prior
Okay.
to this. He's just around. So the thing about this situation in New Mexico territory is it doesn't have a very big population.
Right.
And so most of these people know each other and have known each other for a while.
Okay.
At the time that this stuff goes down, he's a buffalo hunter for a little bit.
Okay.
He's a bartender. He's a cowboy. I don't know this. It might be a joke about how much taller Patrick Wayne is than Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
Because he is just a towering human.
I thought it was
but I don't
interesting because Pat Garrett is best known for shooting Billy the Kid. Spoiler
he's
alert,
nobody
but-
before he does that. And he's nobody after he does that.
Right.
And the only reason it's that big of a deal is because in true Wild West fashion, he writes a book about the guy that he killed. And he's like, this is why you should care that I killed Billy the Kid.
Wow.
So
Sounds kind of like Wyatt Earp.
a little bit.
All right.
So yeah, he's around, but he's not anybody.
He's not like a big name at the time. Okay.
no.
Now he later on he says he's going to go down to Louisiana and be a sheriff. So I mean, like he was known, but
yeah, I mean,
not-
he's like I said, people know everybody in this territory.
Okay.
It's there might be a couple thousand people in the entire current
Country.
border of New Mexico. So you're going to know, like if you hang around Lincoln County, you're going to know everybody in the county or most of the people in the county. So
All right. Most excellent line. We didn't make it far before we got to this. When one of I don't even know who he's supposed to be, but somebody tries to pick fight with Tunstall. He says, "Come on, you and me." And Charlie says, "No. It's you
and
I." And then he goes, "Is that right, John? You and I?" And he goes, Yeah, that's correct. He goes, "It's you and I." And then proceeds to kick his ass.
Well, and earlier in the movie, he's telling Billy that they all have special skills. And so he's
Yeah.
like, so Chavez is a knife man. You and Doc and Dick are all gunsmiths, like gunmen. He goes, I'm a pugilist, but I don't know. I bet you don't know what that means. And then it turns out the pugilist just means professional boxer.
Fun fact on none of the fights in this movie were choreographed. They were all improvised.
That's actually really cool.
I know,
because
right?
there are some good fights in this movie.
Pretty
so-
decent. Pretty decent.
Yeah.
As they return from a long night of dancing and drinking, the boys ride ahead to chase a pheasant, only for John to be ambushed and murdered by Murphy's men. Billy is the sole regulator ready to return fire, but Doc stops him, saying there's too many and they need to get out of there. Fun fact, director Christopher Kane chastised the cast for riding their horses too fast, as he was worried they were going to hurt themselves. And also, Charlie Sheen's the only one who regularly fell off his horse and could not get down horseback riding.
Oof.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
He also was one of the most famous from the cast, so I don't think he's crying over that.
Right.
So the sheriff won't go after Murphy. So we meet Alex McSween, and he's talking to somebody. It's the justice. Who is
Justice
this?
of the peace.
Justice of the peace. Okay. And he's like, "What are we gonna do here?" And he basically says, "Deputize all of the regulators so they can bring in Murphy's men." He's reluctant, but he does so. And then we find out that bring in is, well, it's more of a way. It's more of a suggestion to bring in these men. We're gonna find out real quick that Billy does not bring in any living bodies.
No, he's not big on returning people to the law.
Second most excellent line. After shooting Henry Hill dead, Billy says, "Oh, by the way, you're under arrest," and places the warrant in his mouth. All right, so I've got some questions here, and I think you've got a little bit of some behind the scenes or fun facts.
I got some what actually happened in Lincoln County, 1878.
So it says during the quote unquote arrest of Henry Hill, 9 people were killed. What happened? What went down during this time?
I couldn't find anything on the arrest of Henry Hill.
Oh, this was. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was one of them that you said was.
No, it's okay. I can't promise that they didn't arrest
Okay.
a guy named Henry Hill. I can't promise that a newspaper didn't blow it out of proportion and claim they killed 9 people. There are 4 or 5 main events in the Lincoln County War, and the arrest of Henry Hill is not one of them.
I gotcha.
So at this point in what actually happened, so the actual history. So John Tunstall's 24 years old. Part of the reason he gets added to this feud is because he allies with Alexander McSween, who's already on the Murphy-Dolan hit list for misrepresenting an insurance claim in the hopes of depriving them of money so that he could compete more. It's shaky. It's not completely illegal, but it's one of those where it's like guy who thinks he's good guy does bad thing for what he thinks is good end sort of deal.
Quieter. My goodness.
Yeah.
The parallels here.
It's how range wars worked back then.
Okay.
It was nobody was really the good guy. It's just, were you the bad guy or the worst guy? Usually.
The worse or the worser.
Yeah, did you have a moral code or did you not? Was kind of what happened. So Tunstall has his regulators. In reality, there are 12 regulators, or 12 core regulators, the cowhands that work on his farm. You've got Billy the Kid, Dick Brewer, Doc Scurlock, Chavez E. Chavez, Charlie Bowdry, and then some other guys, Tom O'Follard, Frank McNabb, Jim French. There's 12, they call them the Ironclads when the war starts. There's 12 men who were directly under the pay of John Tunstall when he's killed. By 1878, Tunstall and McSween are losing the economic battle against Murphy Dolan. They just are. Tunstall only has 9 horses left on his ranch. I don't know what else he had left. He and half a dozen of his men are taking the 9 horses to Lincoln to sell them, I believe. They are ambushed by the Jesse Evans gang, which this is where I will say that to counter Tunstall's manpower, Murphy and Dolan hire a bunch of local gangs as their guns, specifically James Dolan. So Murphy's the political acumen, Dolan's the muscle in this relationship, is how it seems to have worked. So he hires the 7 River Warriors, which are an outlaw gang that had been hired by a couple different people for a couple different range wars before this. The Jesse Evans gang and the John Kinney gang, a name that comes up later in the movie. So John Kinney is a bounty hunter. He is fairly well known, and he does have a history of fighting for whoever pays him well. So members of the Jesse Evans gang are going to seize Tunstall and McSween's property. They find Tunstall and his men, and Tunstall and his men scatter because there's like 20 gang members after them. Tunstall goes off by himself. Jesse Evans and then these two other men, William Morton and Tom Hill, corner him. And long story short, Tunstall ends up dead. The men say that he pulls his sidearm to fight them. The regulators say they killed him in cold blood. Nobody other than the three killers saw it. And honestly, from what we know of Tunstall, either way seems perfectly plausible. So it's possible that he fought back. It's possible that they just killed him in cold blood. The important part is that the sheriff will not go after these three men because he is on the payroll of Murphy Dolan.
Okay.
So the justice of the peace does indeed issue warrants to arrest Tunstall's murderers, and he takes the ironclad, so these 12 regulators, and he deputizes them.
Okay.
And we've now caught up to the movie.
And we don't know if Henry Hill was one of them that was actually killed or not, but we're dropping bodies.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, McCloskey, which is one that was used to be a Murphy man, now is not. He's one of the regulators who's been riding with him. He reveals himself a turncoat, and Billy puts a hole in his hat. Too bad his skull got in the way, too.
Yeah.
Doc's poetic heart weeps at the bloodshed that has engulfed him. He is the first to step through on the spiritual journey that they all are about to experience with a little help of Chavez y Chavez and some peyote.
Wow. How long did it take you to write that one?
About 10 seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
All right.
You're a better poet than Doc Scurlock, okay?
It took me 30. Yeah, Doc's poetry is not good.
It's just Edgar Allan Poe ripoffs. That's all it is.
It's not good. Anyways, so we did this scene about guys tripping and giant chickens.
Yeah.
And then we move on.
You guys see the size of this chicken? Gunshot.
Anyways, we're going to get to what I know talking to you before this is real. We're going to get to this next scene where Buckshot Roberts appears. Let's talk about what happens in the movie, and then we'll get to the real life.
Okay.
The crazy old bastard that tells the regulators the price on each of their heads drops to one knee and begins shooting, only hiding behind the cover of his massive testicles. Eventually, he takes cover in an outhouse where, after lots of firing back and forth, Dick goes to check if he's done for, and just like Joe Biden told Jill 20 years ago, Dick's dead now. So,
oh, no.
I have a question before you say what's real and what's not.
Okay.
What's worse, dying in an outhouse or being killed by a man that's dying in an outhouse?
I think dying in the outhouse, honestly.
I feel the same way because you can smell it.
Because Dick just died, right? Like Charlie Sheen's just gone. Like he's just out. Yeah, it's a pretty gnarly scene. It's not as cool as what happened in real life, though.
All right, so, I am excited for this.
I do need to do a little bit of catch up. So McCloskey is actually a temporary regulator. The regulator numbers fluctuate throughout the Lincoln County War. Mm-hmm. In the movie, they make a really big deal of 50, 60 men versus Dick Brewer's 6 or 7. Dick Brewer is the leader of the regulators in real life, just like in the movie. Just like in the movie, the papers decide that Billy the Kid is more important than he actually is for reasons nobody knows. Unlike in the movie, Dick Brewer likes and respects Billy the Kid because Billy is not this loose cannon crazy bastard like he is in the movie. He's just a dude with a gun like all the other dudes with guns, at least in this point of history. So McCloskey is with the regulators when they come across and capture William Morton and Frank Banker, two of the guys who killed Tunstall. They capture them after a 5-mile running gunfight. Oh, my goodness. Where McCloskey convinces the other regulators not to kill Morton or Baker because he was friends with Morton before the Lincoln County War started.
Okay.
2 days later, on the way back to Lincoln, McCloskey, Morton, and Baker all wind up dead.
Intriguing.
The regulators claim that in an attempt to escape, Morton shot McCloskey, and then the regulators had to kill Morton and Baker. When they investigated the bodies, Morton and Baker both had multiple bullet wounds in them, and McCloskey had 1.
Okay.
So, real theory, the regulators got antsy, suspected McCloskey of being a traitor, and much like in the movie, killed all of them.
Assassination. Yeah, so fun fact, Morton and Baker, one of those two, I don't know which one, was Jack Palance's son.
Nice.
Yep.
There is a good line. I think my favorite line in this movie is when Baker says, by killing Henry Hill, y'all started a war, and Dick Brewer goes, by killing John Tunstall, you all started the damn war, Baker.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a good, like,
Back and forth.
no, screw you. You started this.
You started this.
Like,
Okay,
how dare you?
what about Mr. Buckshot Roberts?
Okay, so this one, I have to, I want to say that the killing of Buckshot Roberts happens after the real life killing of Sheriff Brady, which we'll get to in the movie in a second. But to keep our listeners knowing this is the biggest historical flip in the movie, is this change of events timeline. So this is called the Battle of Blazers Mill. It happens on April 4th, 1878.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what happens. Shortly after they bushwhack Sheriff Brady in the middle of the streets of Lincoln, Dick Brewer and the ironclad regulators go to this place called Blazers Mill, which is basically a mill and a trading outpost in the middle of nowhere, to eat at their favorite restaurant, ironically enough.
Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, basically. And a mill at the time is not just a mill. It's usually a mill, a main house, a couple outbuildings, some stables, a general store, things like that. So it's like a very small town square, basically. Through sheer coincidence, former Murphy Dolan ally and local badass Buckshot Roberts shows up to cash in to collect a check that he got for selling his ranch, specifically because he wants nothing to do with the growing violence in Lincoln County.
Oh, okay.
Wants absolutely nothing to do with it. He's in his 40s. The reason he's called Buckshot Roberts is because he has buckshot in his shoulder from an old wound. It keeps him from raising his right arm, I believe. It keeps him from raising one of his arms above about sternum height. So he has to come up with a completely different way to fire a rifle. And he just figures it out.
He fires from the hip in the movie.
Mm-hmm, he does. He drops to a hip.
That's such a cool detail.
Yep. But like everybody else in every Western movie ever, the dude's too old. This isn't your crazy grandpa. This is like your hardcore war vet uncle. Shows
your
up.
raccoon eating uncle.
Yeah. His actual name is Andrew, but everybody called him Buckshot. He was an American buffalo hunter, a frontiersman, and a cowboy. And he goes down in history for what is about to unfold at Blazers Mill. So this guy opens the door to this restaurant. He sees all these horses and he thinks, wow, a lot of people at this mill. He opens the door to the restaurant, and imagine his surprise when he faces the entire upper echelon of the Lincoln County Regulators Army.
Oh my gosh.
They all stare at each other, and Frank Coe, one of the ironclad, is like, hey, buddy, let's talk. He walks with him to the stairs of the main house, and he tries to talk him into surrendering. Roberts, knowing that they just whacked the sheriff of the county, doesn't trust them to not kill him and is willing to take his chances running or fighting. Dick Brewer, reminder, he's 28. He's the leader of this army, and he's 28. Impatiently sends Charlie Beaudry and a couple others to arrest Roberts. Roberts, seeing the armed cowboys like fight walking down the street towards him, doesn't ask questions, jumps up and immediately fires a shot from his Winchester rifle at Charlie Beaudry, blowing his belt buckle apart. Oh. So he misses killing Charlie Beaudry by a centimeter. Beaudry returns fire and hits Roberts in the middle of his stomach. Without missing a beat or registering his wound, Roberts empties his 13-shot Winchester repeater at the Regulators. He shoots John Middleton in the chest, blows George Coe's trigger finger off, grazes Doc Scurlock, and when Billy the Kid himself tries to tackle Roberts after his rifle clicks empty, Roberts turns around and beats down Billy in the street with the barrel of the Winchester and runs into the main house.
Oh my God.
Oh, we're not done yet. We're not done. This man, bleeding through what is probably a mortal stomach wound, slams the door shut, throws a mattress on the ground, grabs a .50 caliber breech loader single shot rifle from the corner of the house with Regulators' bullets flying over him and screams defiance at the young men trying to kill him. The Regulators, shocked at this one-man Rambo army they just unleashed in the middle of this mill, tend to their wounded, and they start talking with Roberts. Dick Brewer, inflamed at the audacity of this old cowboy to take on all 12 of his men, goes around to flank Roberts while he's talking to his other men and starts shooting into the room from behind a wood pile. Roberts is prone on the floor on a mattress and is nowhere near the bullets, but he sees the smoke from the flanking maneuver, turns himself around, waits until Brewer sticks his head up and nails him through the eye with the single shot rifle.
Oh my gosh.
Dick Brewer, leader of the Regulators, is dead before he hits the ground.
Oh man. Oh man.
Demoralized, terrified, and probably with far less white undergarments than they showed up to the mill in, the Regulators retreat. Roberts is tended to at the mill. He dies the next day from his wound. And in the ultimate case of dramatic irony, he and the man he killed, Dick Brewer, are buried next to each other in the front yard of the main house of Blazer's Mill.
That's kind of hilarious. And also, I'm sure that their ghosts have been fighting for close to 200 years now.
Either that, or it was one of those bygones be bygones thing. And Buckshot Roberts is like, you almost had me. I mean, you almost got
insane.
me.
That is insane that they literally retreated and he was still alive. So in a way, if you think about it, he kind of won.
He wins. He single-handedly wins the Battle of Blazer's Mill, but he dies the next morning. The thing about it, though, is the craziest part about this is usually Wild West stories have the crazy version, and then they have the real version.
Okay.
They have the Wyatt Earp vendetta ride where he kills all the cowboys, and then they have the Wyatt Earp vendetta ride where maybe he kills 10 people and he's being chased the whole time, you know? They have the OK Corral shootout, and then there's the 30-second OK Corral shootout.
Right.
This one, much like Wild Bill Hickok gunning a man down in the Springfield Square in 1868, is testified to by everybody else at Blazer's Mill. This story doesn't come from the Regulators. This story comes from the people who lived and worked at the mill.
My goodness, man.
Yeah.
That is insane.
That dude was not having it. I can't imagine you're done. Like you're in your mid 40s in the 1870s. You're like, I don't want any of this. The sheriff's dead. Murphy's lost his mind. I'm out of here. And you go to this mill in the middle of nowhere to pick up your check for selling your ranch, specifically to not be part of the Lincoln County War. And you open the door to half of the freaking Lincoln County War.
No kidding. Oh my gosh, dude.
I told you it was cooler in real life. This is the one part of the movie that I wish they'd have just done like exactly like the historical record.
But they couldn't because it would make them look so bad.
They already do look bad. Like
I guess they don't look. Yeah, they don't look very good here.
They don't look quite as bad, I suppose, right. But they still look bad.
All right. So after they tend to their wounds and they realize, obviously their leader's gone.
Right.
Chavez gives some backstory, and he's talking about the Red Sand Creek Reservation, where apparently 270, where apparently 207 people were butchered. And he says he went to Lincoln for Murphy's head, and Tunstall found him and helped him find a more peaceful way of living. Is this Red Sand Creek Reservation essentially massacre real?
It's not, but it's very closely based on one that was real.
Okay.
So the specifics of the massacre that movie Chavez survives are fictional, but it's based on a very infamous episode in the history of the American West called the Sand Creek Massacre.
Okay.
It happens in 1864, so it's not relevant to the events in the movie at all. So I'll keep it short. But basically, Native Americans who had signed a treaty with the United States and were flying an American flag were attacked by 675 volunteer Colorado cavalry militia.
Okay.
And 150 people were killed, and about 2/3 of them were women and children and old people.
Yikes.
And it took until, I want to say, the 90s for that to be called a massacre. They called it the Battle of Sand Creek before.
Okay.
Which is pretty not okay, considering the situation.
Yeah.
So it's not real, but it is a very, very, very well done testament to the plight of Native Americans at this point in American history.
Yeah.
Because it's rough. So
I don't think anyone can deny that, not our entire history is not all rainbows and sunshine. It's
not all freeing the slaves,
moments.
guys. It's got its problems.
Yeah, we got some dark moments in our history. Got some bright ones too, but
Yep.
You gotta take it for what it was, what it is.
Take it for what it was. But it's a very well crafted, similar idea to the Sand Creek Massacre, and it gets across the point that Billy accuses Chavez of not caring, and Chavez is like, "How dare you say that to me, you little piece of crap?
Yeah.
you don't know what suffering is. Okay, don't come at me."
So Billy shoots the sheriff in the middle of the day. This is Sheriff Brady.
Yeah, Sheriff William Brady. Yeah,
Sheriff William Brady in the middle of the day, broad daylight, middle of the street.
Yep.
And now they're all wanted. So what happens here? All right, because in the movie he's just like mocking him, walking behind him. Pretty straightforward. Draws his own pistol and kills him.
Yeah. So, in real life, this happens not long after McCloskey's murdered with the two Evans gang members.
Gotcha.
So on April 1st, 1878, Billy and 5 other regulators are hiding in the corral behind Tunstall's general store because it's still there, even though the guy died. Sheriff Brady is walking down the street and they just bushwhack him. They just ambush him from the corral. They shoot him 10 times and kill him and his deputy. One regulator is badly wounded by the deputy and has to heal in the cellar of a sympathetic citizen of Lincoln. But that's all it is. They just wait, and as soon as he comes by, they kill him and leave. That's all they do.
So he didn't like go out in the middle of the street and shoot him, but he was killed in the middle of the street. Yeah.
Okay. He was gunned down in the middle of the day.
And it wasn't
in the middle
of
the street.
Billy by himself.
No, it was
okay.
It was Billy and 5 of the ironclad, I think. So
okay. So Billy mentions his plan to get the president's attention. President Hayes. Who the hell is President Hayes?
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Rutherford B. Hayes. I don't know if I know the name, but I can't tell you a single thing about this.
He's
fella.
the president at the time, and he is really only well known for being a president who got his seat due to a compromise.
Did they flip a coin?
No, actually, what they do is they have a backroom deal where Hayes gets the presidency because he's, a Republican and whatever.
Because he lost a popular vote. Does that make sense?
Because that makes sense. Well, he gets the presidency because Congress is still Republican.
Okay.
And the backroom deal is that the Southern Democrats and the Republican opposition acquiesce to Hayes being the president on the condition that he end both federal support for Reconstruction and the military occupation of the former Confederate states.
Okay.
So Hayes is known for the compromise that puts him in the White House and ends any hope of the Southern states not winning what we call Reconstruction. And that is the beginning of Jim Crow laws and black codes and all sorts of fun stuff that we get to deal with a century later. But
so in other words, we don't like Hayes.
Well, it's not really Hayes' fault, but we don't like
Hayes.
What Hayes represents.
All right, that's fair. On a better note, Charlie proves that he's the most relatable character in the movie. We should also point out that they are becoming more and more wanted. They just shot Sheriff Brady in the middle of the street. They are wanted to be hanged. And Charlie proves he's the most relatable character in the movie. Faced with his own mortality, he convinces the gang to let him go stick his young gun in a dirty holster for the first time.
Yeah, baby.
Who is this uppity Texas fella in a long blue coat who's all curls and mustache?
As far as I can tell, absolutely nobody.
All right. Well,
he is pure movie.
We got some Emilio Estevez ass, and then we're moving on.
Yep.
Billy says that against the best judgment of the group, they're heading back to Lincoln, where they're sure to meet a small army. It's 100 against 1.
It's 100 against 1. Or 100 against 5. It's 100 against 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said 1. 100 against 5. Yeah, and then he mocks him. Totally out of character, but oh well. Steve tells Chavez, "Damn good riding with you." Chavez replies, "Many nights I put a knife to your throat while you're sleeping. I'm glad I didn't kill you. You're all right." So, not historical, but need to know information. Did Charlie ever do it with a prostitute, or did he save himself for his wedding night?
Seeing as how in real life Charlie is a 32-year-old man, I'm gonna assume he probably did it with a prostitute. I'm gonna go out on a limb.
I did read a thing, and it was like very far down on the fun facts. I don't know if this is real. Apparently that scene with a prostitute was supposed to go on for longer, and you were supposed to discover that it was actually his mother.
Oh.
That doesn't make any sense, but whatever. Maybe that's true. I don't know.
I kind of like the way they had it, honestly. I like that it's this woman who is vaguely important to him because first it's his first time. And then you're like, well, maybe it's not his first time. Maybe this is the woman who he paid for his first time. Like I like the ambiguousness. of it.
So Patty Garrett lets Billy know that Alex McSween, Tunstall's lawyer and ally to the Regulators, is going to be killed by Murphy the next day at his house with his wife. So there's this cool moment where Billy turns his back to Pat Garrett and he asks him if he's his friend. Pat reaches for his gun and stops and says, "Yes, I am, Bill."
Yep.
This didn't happen, did it? Or at least it's
No.
not confirmed. Okay.
No, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid did know each other. And there's even evidence. I can't remember if there's hard evidence or evidence to suggest that Pat Garrett is part of Billy the Kid's gang for a hot second. I know he is in Young Guns too.
Mm-hmm.
For this movie, that's not super relevant, but they know each other. I like how he puts his hand on his gun when Billy says, "Hey, Pat." And Pat's like, "Yeah, Billy," because the reputation for Billy at this point is he's just dropping people left and right.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Yeah." And then when Billy says, "Are you my friend?" that's when he takes the hand off the gun. But he's like, I will not die here in Mexico." Like, I refuse.
You can tell that the thought runs through his head.
Yep.
It's time for a showdown.
Yes,
The
it is.
Regulators arrive at Alex's home, just as every bad guy that's ever been seen, mentioned, or even pondered upon arrives as well. The house is surrounded, and it doesn't take long for the lead to fly. I texted you, and I was like, "All right, this is completely fake, right?" And you're like, "No, it actually happened." I was like, "What?
You're like, "Excuse me?"
What? A
No way.
house siege
Yeah.
that did not kill everyone who was inside the house?
Nope.
Wild."
Crazy.
Wild. Let's
It's
get to the
insane.
real part here in just a second.
Yeah.
I need to point out that Yin arrives with Murphy. She immediately jumps off his stagecoach, runs into the house because she wants to be with Doc. Murphy shouts China after
China!
her as
China!
if that's her name. It's so bad. He's the villain, so it's okay. It's okay.
Right, it's
but
okay.
gosh dang it.
It's a very heavy-handed way of being like, he only objectifies her. And
No
we're like,
kidding.
dude, we know. He
We
bought her
get
for the
it.
price of a ruined shirt. Like, we're aware.
The troops light the house on fire. Alec's wife, Susan, leaves. Chavez sneaks away. Somehow? It's not explained.
Native American, baby.
It never is shown. We talked about in The Mummy how if we're in the Middle East or we're in the desert during a certain time period, we had to have these stereotypes. I
Yep.
feel like there's a long running stereotype of Native Americans have like superpowers.
Yeah,
Because
somehow they can just...
Chavez just sneaks away
just
while
disappear.
completely surrounded.
Yeah.
and then comes back with horses.
Yep.
He gathered horses somehow.
Not enough horses, just a few.
Just a few. He knew not everybody was going to make it.
He was like, "I'm not saving Dirty Steve. I refuse."
All right, so they torch the house. They're throwing things out. Billy is in one of the suitcases that gets tossed out. Very cool moment.
It is.
That is dulled by extreme slow motion video. Not a huge fan of that effect here, but like
No.
I need to know what happened. What would happen if it didn't land right side up? What would happen if they throw Billy in this suitcase out this window? First off, that had to hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Second off, what if it landed upside down and he can't get back out of it?
It's a really good question.
I
man.
mean, he really flipped a coin with that one.
yeah.
Yeah. Couple fun facts here. Emilio Estevez is actually one of the bad guys during the final shootout. He disguised himself and joined the opposition on a day that he wasn't involved in shooting.
Oh
Also,
my gosh.
one of the other bad guys, I want you to take a guess. I want you to take the wildest guess you can possibly guess and think of a name who happens to also be one of the bad guys in this shootout.
Tom Cruise.
Okay, it is Tom Cruise. Okay, how you had to have known that. There's no way you just guessed that.
I think I'd heard it like
Okay.
before. It was in the back of my
you're
mind.
very
You asked,
long-
me that,
yeah.
you asked me that question. I'm like, I don't know how I know
You
this,
totally-
but I know it's Tom Cruise.
You totally just ruined my bit, but it's fine.
I'm sorry.
Tom Cruise was on set for a single day and wanted to be involved in the movie, apparently. And he's killed by Charlie as he bursts out the side door. But yeah, Tom Cruise is in this movie. And he's
Nice.
not Bill, or he's not on the poster or anything. Chavez returns with the horses. Dirty Steve and Charlie don't make it. Charlie does make sure to kill John Kinney, though. the man that he has feared the most out of all of them.
John Kinney, you bastard, it's you and I. That's a good callback line.
It is a good callback line. And then you have the biggest WTF moment of the movie when the troops use a damn Gatling gun to kill McSween for no reason.
Yeah.
Okay, it's strange enough that troops are here, and then to use a Gatling gun, you have 100 men around this house. Why did you need? They just wanted to use it. They just wanted to use it. I swear.
They were like, the West had Gatling guns.
It doesn't make any sense. Billy returns, puts a single bullet in McMurphy's head, or McMurphy. It's just Murphy.
Just Murphy.
It's just Murphy. Billy returns to put a single bullet in Murphy's head. End of movie.
And he says, now it's over.
Now it's over. Kyle, I can't believe this siege is real. That's crazy. I can't believe this house existed. I need to hear what happened. What happened?
Oh, you definitely do. But first, I gotta tell you the craziness that the regulators are going through. They've killed Sheriff Brady. They've fought Rambo Roberts at Blazer's Mill
and his massive testicles.
Yeah. 3 weeks after Dick Brewer, the leader of the regulators, gets shot, the new Sheriff Pepin, who shows up in the Battle of Lincoln, leads the Evans Gang and the Seven River Warriors gunmen. And he finds 3 regulators at Fritz Ranch, including the newly elected leader, Frank McNabb. McNabb is killed. Another regulator, Abe Saunders, is wounded. Frank Coe's captured. The next day, 4 Seven River Warriors are killed in the middle of Lincoln. Everybody knows the regulators did it. None of them saw anything. It can't be proved.
Interesting.
But the regulators do kill another Seven Rivers warrior, Manuel Segovia, on May 15th and broadcast it to the county that they killed him.
Damn.
Finally, this back and forth of bloodshed, at which point it's important to note that the movie makes a huge deal about it only being the 6 regulators versus all of, Murphy and Dolan's power.
Yeah.
In real life, at their peak, their numbers are about equal. There's about 60 to 80 hired guns by Murphy and Dolan, and there's about 60 to 70 regulators at any given time.
Huh.
The problem with the regulators is anybody who's not the ironclad kind of just comes and goes.
Okay.
So the regulators are always outnumbered, but they're never outnumbered to the level that the movie makes it seem like.
Right.
Anyway, we get to July 15th, 1878. We start the Battle of Lincoln with the ironclad regulators and several others, I think like 40 in total, so most of the regulators. Arriving in Lincoln at Alexander McSween's request, they are immediately cornered by the Seven Rivers Warriors, the Evans Gang, deputies, John Kinney's gang, everybody Dolan and Murphy can throw at them. They're cornered in 2 main locations, McSween's house with Billy the Kid, and Henry Brown, Jim French, Chavez Chavez, George Coe, and a handful of Mexican vaqueros who are fighting for the regulators, and the Ellis store, where Doc Scurlock, Charlie Beaudry, Frank Coe, and some others are barricaded.
Okay.
So they split them in 2 places. There's also a large force of Mexican vaquero regulators led by Josefita Chavez of about 20 or 30 men in town who are trying to brainstorm ways to get these guys out. For 3 days, shots are fired between the house and the men gathered outside.
Mm-hmm.
The regulators launch a couple of counteroffensives through the town to try to relieve pressure on the house because McSween and his wife and his kids and his law partner are in there, and they want to be able to get people out.
Right.
None of them work, but it's very touch and go for both sides. However, one exchange happens where a group of regulators wound or fire at, the record is unclear, a federal soldier. And so on day 4 of the siege, the army arrives and is sent to end the problem without further violence.
Right.
However, it also skews the numbers highly in the Murphy-Dolan camp because the army is not there to help the regulators. They're just there to end the problem.
Mm-hmm.
With explicit orders to not engage in violence at all. Billy the Kid, at this point, the army points cannons at the Ellis store and the other regulator strongholds, and everybody who's not in the house gets the hell out of Lincoln. They just leave.
Right.
Because cannons are cannons. On July 19th, somewhere in the late evening, the house is set on fire by Murphy men. Billy and the regulator Jim French lay down cover fire with their revolvers as they kick open the back door and sprint to their horses with other regulators in tow. All of the main ironclad regulators pinned in the house make it, though they are wounded as they escape.
Huh.
McSween's law partner, though, is shot while trying to flee with the regulators. So the
He wasn't
regulators
even in
make
the
it out, and as they leave, the Seven Rivers Warriors converge on the house, intending to arrest the vaqueros, the other loosely affiliated regulators, McSween, the people left in the house.
Yeah.
Somehow, a firefight erupts. This is where Charlie Crawford, the man so famous for Billy saying Charlie Crawford ain't with you no more.
Yeah.
This is where he dies, as does Alex McSween.
Oh, okay.
And then a handful of the vaquero regulators escape. This conflict effectively ends the war in the sense that with McSween dead and John Chisholm, the guy I mentioned earlier, effectively tapped out of the war, there's no need for the regulators to keep fighting. But Billy and his gang, which is made up of about half of the ironclad regulators, survive until various points in 1880 and 1881, when Billy is inevitably killed by the sheriff Pat Garrett at Fort Sumner.
And Murphy, in real life, I read about this. Murphy in real life has been dying of cancer this whole time.
Yeah,
right?
at the end, it's really Dolan who cares. It's why
Right.
Dolan is the one who, because this whole time Murphy's so sick that he honestly doesn't care. It's worth noting that James Dolan's only 30 when this is happening. So everybody in this is a young man. Well, younger. Like
Young
none of them are
guns.
old. Yep.
All right, man. Well, that's a heck of a. I can't believe that was real. I guess it is quite different than what happens in the movie, but still,
It's pretty different. It's worth noting that McSween's house in real life is made of adobe, so it's much more bulletproof than a wooden house would be. And that they do kick open the door. There was a claim for a while that they actually like dug through the adobe with their pistol butts, but then the guys that were there on the other side were like, no, they just kicked the door open and started shooting at us and ran.
I mean, that's fair.
The craziest part is only like 7 people are killed in that 5-day siege.
That is kind of wild.
It's McSween and his partner, and I think 3 other loosely affiliated regulators. One is killed by a stray shot while he's in the house, and then two Murphy men are killed. Charlie Crawford and another guy.
Huh. All right. All right. Well, Kyle, you remember from season 2 what time it is
To party on and be excellent?
No.
Oh.
Bit is dope, bit is nope.
Oh, right. Yeah, that thing that we do.
Thanks.
Thanks
for bringing the excitement, Kyle. Gosh dang it.
I'm trying, man.
All right.
Doing my best.
You want to go first? You want me to?
How about you go first? I
I'll go first.
want to hear your take.
All right. Ready? Set. Go. Biggest dope. Emilio Estevez's ass. I'm just kidding. No, that's not true.
Wow.
Biggest dope. I'm gonna say the shootout with Buckshot Rogers. I love that scene. He's just so crazy. Biggest nope. I'm surprised you said it was good because the soundtrack is easily the worst part of this movie. All right, your turn.
Okay. Biggest dope. I like the killing of McCluskey for the movie purpose because it shows how unhinged Billy the Kid has become.
Yeah.
Like he's just lost his mind. And then biggest nope. I think the Yen Sun plot line is just unnecessary. And also trying to change Doc Scurlock into this well-rounded, educated guy when in reality he's one of the most brutal of the regulators. The dude had his front teeth shot out in a bar brawl, killed a Native American warrior in one-on-one combat, and like several other things, and then opened a cheese store with with Charlie Beaudry.
As you do.
Yeah.
As you do.
So like this attempt, specifically him, to change his character so far when he's a big deal. Like he's the third leader of the regulators. So yeah.
I did read, maybe unrelated, but I did read that all the cast members did extensive research on the people they were playing, and Doc refused to, or Kiefer Sutherland, who plays Doc, refused to because he wanted to use his own imagination. He wanted to bring himself to the character rather than try to portray it like a documentary. So he was not trying to portray the real Doc, but also the Doc that's written in the movie is not who you just described. So, anyways, I don't know if that adds to it or not, but moving on. So Now we gotta do Young Guns 2. We have to do Young Guns 2, man. I want to watch it. Like, Young Guns made me want to watch Young Guns 2. We'll put out a poll. We'll see if anyone wants us to do it or not. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, our rating, Kyle. History,
Yes.
and this one's definitely got enough history.
Oh yeah, it gets a history. It gets a history rating this time.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's hear your 2 ratings, and then I'll give mine.
Okay. Personal enjoyment rating. I gotta give it an 8, man.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's an 8 out of 10 quality movie, but it's an 8 out of 10 quality fun time. Like I enjoy it. I always have a good time watching it. I can't watch it on repeat, but I can watch it relatively frequently and not dislike it. Historically, I'm gonna give it a 6. Because other than the second gunfight I mentioned, where Frank McNabb, the second leader of the Regulators, is killed, it's close enough. They get the big points in there. I mean, they potentially create the Henry Hill killing. But across the board, they hit the big points. So I'll give it a 6. You know something about the Lincoln County War when you leave this movie, and what you know is relatively correct. So
I do like, and this is something that they pointed out, that this was, like, at the time, the most accurate portrayal of the Lincoln County War. And also, like we've mentioned a couple times, another thing that was in here was that Billy says, whenever he's reading the news headline, and they go, the left-handed shooter, and he goes, I'm not left-handed. Like, little things like that. They mention things that were believed but weren't true. And so... And also, like, the alias of William H. Bonney, it's believed to be his real name. It's really not. Things like that, I think, are just super cool. And the fact that, like,
or calling John Tunstall Englishman,
right.
And like things like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, man, it feels good to be back. We are changing things up. I'm sure we've already announced this. Let's just do it again. We're doing 6 episodes. Then we're going to take a little break. We're going to do 6 episodes, take a little break, and then 6 more episodes. So we're going to be 18 in total, but it's going to be spread out a little bit more. We've got lots of fun things coming to you guys. We just launched our Instagram. We've got some more videos on our Facebook page. YouTube is up and going, and we are working on getting some more out there.
YouTube's cranking, guys. 30,000 people and counting have watched our videos. Don't be left out. Don't be left out of the surge.
Don't be one of the not watchers. That was terrible. God damn it. Why did I even say anything?
The not watchers?
That was so bad. I was trying to think. I thought something would just come to me, but it just didn't.
Don't be like John Wayne and his nephew. Don't search for the YouTube channel for 5 years. Just go find it and watch a video.
Just go find it. She doesn't want to be found. Stop looking. Watch our YouTube videos instead.
Yep.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Man, we are so excited about season 3. We've got so many guests lined up. We've got so many fun things coming your way. It's gonna be great. We're gonna get drunk during one of our episodes.
Yeah, we are.
We're watching great movies. We're watching terrible movies, and we're gonna have a great time this whole season. Lots of energy, lots of focus, lots of passion. Kyle, send us home. What do we got here?
For the next episode, or just a quote? What do you want? From
I never
me?
said my rating, by the way. It's a 7. I'm giving it
I was
7.
like, wait a second, did we miss something?
I'm gonna give it a 7. When I was a kid, I loved this movie. I thought it was like a 9. When I watched it this time, I was like, it's still good. But honestly, I think the last, like the Siege, it's crazy that it really happened. But the Siege is just kind of for me.
It fizzles. It really does.
Let's get out of here. Thank you all for checking us out, listening to us. Leave a comment. Joey, you beautiful soul, left a comment on one of our ones. Yeah, I still don't know how to leave comments, and I'm trying to figure out how to reply to him, but he left a comment. Thank you, Joey. We appreciate you. Thank you to all of our listeners. We're gonna see you next week. So, peace out.
And we have no idea what it will be, so you're welcome.
You're welcome. All right. Bye.
Bye.